Well, I think after you do it for a long time and there's clearly a pattern, you try to understand why is this dynamic happening. And what really was a driver for us is just all the wasted time, money, and resources.
So what we began to realize is this is the both and that when you have two what appear to be competing values, they each have value. They each have positive outcomes. It's more about bringing them into balance with each other than replacing one with the other.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govind Jayaraman.
Hi, I'm Govind Jayaraman, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 353. So it's interesting how sometimes the biggest breakthroughs don't come from learning something new, but from seeing something familiar in a completely different way. And maybe you've experienced that before. Maybe you've seen something simple, almost too simple, and it suddenly shifts how you think, how you lead, and how you show up. Today's conversation just might do that. I'm joined by two incredible leaders who've spent decades exploring something that most of us experience every single day without ever naming it. Dr. Tracy Christopherson and Michelle Troseth, also known as the Polarity Power Pair, have worked across healthcare systems, leadership teams, and organizations around North America, helping people understand why some problems never seem to go away, no matter how many times we solve them. And what they've discovered might challenge the way you think about decision-making altogether. Because what if some of the things that you've been trying to fix were never meant to be fixed? What if the tension you've been trying to eliminate is actually pointing you towards something much more powerful? In this conversation, we're going to explore a deceptively simple napkin and one that reveals the difference between problems that can be solved and tensions that must be led. And as you listen, you might begin to notice where you've been choosing or when maybe there was no need to choose at all. And just stay with that and sit with it and see what shows up for you. And let's dive in. Michelle Troseth and Tracy Christopherson, welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
We're excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's fun. We were talking in the green room before we began about the cold in the winter, and and the fact that Tracy doesn't have any of that. So little jealous, but just share some sunshine when you can, Tracy.
I
That would be great.
am. I beam it every day to
Yeah,
your
I can
part of the
see that
country.
in your disposition. That's wonderful. So you shared with me an interesting paper napkin, and it's got 4 quadrants in it, but it really feels like there's a line. There's a sort of above the line and below the line kind of thinking, and I'll go around from top left clockwise. Decisive, effective choices in the top left quadrant. The top right quadrant, it says virtuous cycle towards greater purpose. Bottom right, indecisive, unable to solve problems. And the bottom left, vicious cycles of polarization and power struggles. Now, this feels like a really interesting model, and I'm curious why you shared it with me.
Yeah, well, I'll start. This is Tracy. And I would say I shared it because I think as a lifelong learner, this is the most impactful and powerful thing I've ever learned. It is one of those that once you learn it, you can't unlearn it, and you see it everywhere, and it gives you a whole new lens with which to see the experiences that you have in business, in life, everywhere, in leadership. They're everywhere.
Mhm. And I think the other reason we wanted to share it with you specifically is we were really attracted to your podcast because once you understand this concept, you could break it down and you could write it on a napkin. And Tracy and I, we wrote a book called Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and there's a napkin in our book to show
No
you
way.
how. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. I love it.
So we were aligned right from the start.
Yeah, it's like we've known each other for generations. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, so let's not dive into the model yet, though I know you've talked about its profound nature. Tracy, how did you guys stumble upon this? What was your journey to bring you here?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have to tell you a little bit about my journey with Michelle to tell you about how we got here. And that is we met over 40 years ago in hospital orientation in a very large auditorium where they said, stand up and shake the hand of the person behind you. And that was me. And so Michelle and I like to say we've been shaking hands ever since. We grew up, we were clinicians. Michelle, a nurse, I was a respiratory therapist. We worked at the bedside together, caring for patients. And then we started our leadership journey, and we happened to be engaged in an organization that was really focused on transforming healthcare and really making it the best place for patients to receive care and the best place for clinicians to work. And I had a mentor there that we worked with, and we connected that work to healthcare organizations all across North America. So eventually we weren't just doing the work in our own organization, we were doing it everywhere. And when we were working with these organizations, we were trying to move them from kind of more hierarchy to partnering types of organizations, from individual focus to, to team focus and a number of different things. And what we kept running into the same problems over and over. We'd make a little bit of progress, and then pretty soon the problem would pop up again. And it was like, why is this happening? Why are we having such a struggle to sustain the outcomes that we were getting? And that's when we learned about the concept of polarities. Now, I'll let Michelle add to that, whatever you want to.
Yeah. So it's really easy to try to solve a problem, but polarities are interdependent pairs of values, or they can seem opposite, but they actually need each other. So when you try to move from something to something else, that's a problem. That's an either or mindset. And we realized, no, we really need both. We need the best individualized care, and we need the best team care. And these are polarities, and they're everywhere. And so we began to explore, how do we actually leverage them so we can experience the best of both of these, what they seem to be opposite, but we need both of them. And it really became our life work. We studied them. We even got to the point where we could measure them, and they make all the difference in the world, because if you don't look at it in a both and mindset, you'll never succeed. You'll never get transformation or sustainable outcomes. And so we took it on, and that's why we're here.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's flip back a bit. And I don't need to go back 40 years, but let's go back to this point where you were talking about that your organization was, focused on healthcare and improving outcomes in healthcare, which is, a very common thing that many healthcare organizations are still very focused on, which is great. And what I think is really interesting is you started talking about process and the systems that were being implemented, and you'd come in and solve a problem to improve outcomes, which is what the stated objective was. There wasn't an either or objective. We want better outcomes. And yet, as you implemented these, let's say, initiatives, things would go back and things would disappear. And so how did you first observe this? Like, let's talk about, because I think a lot of people are seeing this pattern and they're not, or in the pattern and they're not seeing the pattern. You got out of the pattern and saw the pattern. And I think that's step number one. Let's talk about how you even noticed. Why should someone care about this? Could this be happening to them right now?
Well, I think after you do it for a long time and there's clearly a pattern, you try to understand, why is this dynamic happening? And what really was a driver for us is just all the wasted time, money, and resources. So polarities have really been around forever, even when you think about the yin and yang energy, how you need both. But it's very few people that have taken it and put it into a tangible lens that you can understand how it affects your personal life, your home, organizations, and then how you can actually begin having strategies so that you can actually realize both sides of a polarity.
A mochi moment from Sadie, who writes, I'm not crying, you're crying. This is what I said during my first appointment with my physician at Mochi, because I didn't have to convince him I needed a GLP-1. He understood, and I felt supported, not judged. I came for the weight loss and stayed for the empathy. Thanks, Sadie. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Sadie is a Mochi member compensated for her story.
Yeah. I think what came up for us is this moving away from something, seeing it as bad, to moving to something that we thought was better. And so we were trying to get people to move from it and to it. So therefore, we were discounting the value of that other element. So let's just use, in a healthy work environment, we have both hierarchical relationships and partnering relationships at the ultimately, right? And we were trying to move people away from hierarchy, thinking this is bad, right? The downsides of hierarchy, we were living in those downsides, and we wanted to move them to let's partner, right? Across the board, from the CEO all the way down to the individual at the point of care. And that's what we need to do. But there's a downside to that. So when we over-focused, we started to experience the negative consequences of that. And when you use a problem-solving lens, you think, oh, we must have missed something on the other side. We must have missed something about hierarchical relationships. So we found ourselves in this pendulum swing back and forth and began to recognize, wait a minute, there is value in hierarchical relationships. It's just we weren't tapping it in the appropriate way and maintaining the positive outcomes. We were over-focusing on it, which was driving our need and desire for partnering relationships. So what we began to realize is this is the both and, that when you have two what appear to be competing values, they each have value. They each have positive outcomes. It's more about bringing them into balance with each other than replacing one with the other. And it became apparent that's all we know. All we know is either or. If this is the right answer, that's the wrong answer. If this is the solution, that's not the solution. And we're taught that from the time we're young.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why this was so groundbreaking for us, because it was like, wait a minute, this isn't either or. This is both and. Now, how do we adjust our solutions to get both?
Yeah, and I
That's
think one of the things that's really interesting about that is that your perspective on either in this example, hierarchy or team or more collaborative solutions is true and incomplete, right? So
Yes.
each one there's a very true perspective, but it's an incomplete perspective.
Exactly.
And once we understand all the way around the perspective, we can take or make a better option that isn't a choice. It's usually more incorporative, right?
Yeah.
So you teased a little bit, Michelle, that it's applicable in beyond a healthcare setting and beyond a business setting, and you talked about it being applicable in personal life. How would people find these polarities appear in their personal life? How have you experienced those?
Sure. Well, I think one of the big ones that Tracy and I realized early too, because we saw it in ourselves and we help leaders and entrepreneurs with this all the time now, is that work-life balance isn't possible because people, again, put it in the either or mindset, or they think it has to be 50-50. I spend 50% of my time in my personal life and 50% of my time in my work life. And it's really an and in both. And when you understand it through that polarity mindset or polarity lens, then you know that there's going to be times that you have to put energy and action towards your professional life or your career. And you always have to put time and energy towards your personal life or your family as well. And that sometimes one may demand more than the other, but you never drop activity or action on one of the sides. And when you can learn that and put your own plan into place about how you're going to manage that, work-life balance is possible and it is sustainable over a long period of time. But It's, again, like Tracy said, we're trained early on to always think either or. There's got to be one answer to help me do this, and they burn out. And we love the fact that your theme is resilience, because this is a key one that you have to manage personally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think another example of that too, just a simple would be activity and rest.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're a type A personality, you're building a business, you're a dynamic leader, you're go, go, go all the time. And we don't take the time to rest, but we know it's the rest and rejuvenation that fuels us to be the best leader, to be the best business owner that we can be. So that's another just easy example.
Yeah, no, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a great one. Is it as simple as starting with this idea? And look, we're talking about binary choices. I think we're talking about, this or that. I think at the same time is it could be this or that. It could be this, that, or the other thing too. And there can be 3 variables. There can be 4 variables. Is this as simple as, and I'm not trying to make it simple, but is it as simple as, no, I am trying to make it as simple. Is it as simple as saying, hey, like, I'm not choosing between things. I'm going to eat my cake. I'm going to have my cake and eat it too. I'm going to find a way to do both. And I'm going to take the best from both worlds. And I'm going to design it that way from the beginning. And it sounds like it's an intentional thing. If you set out with the fact that I have to choose, then you have to choose. But if you decide, I don't have to choose, then you don't. Do you?
Yeah. I think it's really about recognizing it's you have both. So you have problems that need to be solved, and there you use your either or thinking.
Yeah.
Problem has an endpoint. You've got a challenge. You identify your solutions, A, B, or C. You choose the one you think is going to be the best. You apply it. Problem done. Endpoint. Polarities are ongoing. They never end because it's a dynamic between these 2 values that are in this interdependent relationship. So you first have to identify, do I have a problem I'm solving, or is it one of these dynamics where I'm going to need both, like focus on my professional life, but also get the most out of my personal life? That's when you say, okay, I don't have to choose. I can do both. And a lot of times the reasons we're choosing is because we are afraid. We have fears. So if I over focus, right, on my personal life, then I'm going to lose the things that I value in my professional life. I have a kind of that in my own mind, right, that there's going to be a loss. If I give attention to this other pole, I'll lose something that I value. So we choose not to do it because we don't want to have that experience. But when we can see it as a both and, then we can free ourselves up and say, wait, that doesn't have to be true. I can do this in a dynamic way. I can flex my efforts and my attentions as I need to and keep this in flow rather than like a pendulum swinging from one to the other.
Michelle, anything to add to that?
Well, one of the examples that Tracy and I like to give about a problem and an endpoint is one that we deal with all the time, and it's probably the most commonly asked question in every household, and that's what are we gonna have for dinner tonight? So you have a lot of different choices, if you want to do fast food, or if you want to make a salad, if you want to cook something, if you want your favorite ethnic food. But once you decide, that's it. You're solving your problem. And where polarities are more ongoing, they never go away. And again, a metaphor that might really help your listeners is we like to use the example of breathing. We don't wake up and just say, I'm just going to inhale today. That's all I'm going to do. You need to inhale and exhale to have life. And if either one of those stops, it's 100% predictable you're going to die. So that's the power of understanding when there's 2 interdependent pairs that have to be leveraged, that there will be a predictable outcome. And that's why it's almost like a crystal ball once you really look at the specific tension that you're dealing with.
But not all polarities are as dire.
No.
Thank goodness, no.
It really is, I think, the only one that you will die if you don't manage it.
Yeah, so
And
you went from
thank
dinner to
goodness.
dying, and I thought that was a pretty big leap. I was like, there's got to be somewhere in between here, Michelle.
That's
Come
kind of
on.
how she operates.
Yeah. It was very stark.
Yeah.
It's
and
like,
and
I
thank
didn't know it was
goodness.
my last dinner. Wait a minute.
And thank goodness our bodies take care of that for us, right?
Right.
Our
Yeah.
body just does it. And
Yeah.
it's only when we only have to intervene when it stops keeping it in balance. But it does it whether you're meditating or you're using breath work, right? You're doing that consciously, you're regulating that breath. It's still, right? It's a balance of it. It's not, I'm going to inhale and stop.
So one of the things I think is really interesting about this, and I think it's interesting to think about this from the perspective of problem solving, because many times we implement a solution that is a choice, but it's a very artificial choice, right? We've made a choice that's easiest for us in the moment
Mhm.
to accept. And you've talked about fear being it, but I think sometimes it's just, water flows to the easiest place. And, many people misunderstand strategy to just be something that solves it for now. Like a guaranteed solution is better than one that might be easier in the long term to maintain. So they'll implement a quick solution because it gets them off this problem and onto something else. And I think those are times and moments where people could slow down and think about, what choice am I making here, right?
Mhm.
And is there a structure for that kind of decision making, or that you have, or how do you guide people in that situation?
Yeah. Well, and sometimes when you're making that choice and it's a polarity, it's a false choice. To your point, you're
Yeah,
trying to,
exactly.
Yeah.
That was my point. That you're making a
there's a tension that's rising and you're trying to alleviate the tension. And we're taught tension's bad, right? You don't want tension in your life. But in this case, tension is just an indicator that you don't have two values in balance with each other. What we had alluded to it originally was the back of the napkin. So you can very quickly map out what you're experiencing by drawing the 4 quadrants, like we shared with you, identifying what the values are that you're trying, if it's activity and rest, or my professional life and my personal life. And you can document, what is it that I really want when I give my attention to this? What are the outcomes I'm seeking for both? And what's going to happen if I don't do that, right? If I don't give attention to these, there is always a downside. 100% guaranteed you'll experience the downside of it. And when you're mapping it out, then it's just what actions will get me these outcomes. And what's important is you have to take the actions simultaneously. You can't just take actions on this pole and then wait and then take actions over here. It's a simultaneous activity. But when life draws you towards one pole or the other, because it will, let's say you have an elderly parent that you're caring for. Now attention needs to shift. You're doing a whole lot with that individual. You're supporting them. Life is drawing you towards your personal life. You still have to take action in your professional life, but maybe you don't do as much. Maybe you let go of a few committees you're on. Maybe you decrease what you're involved in so that you can give more attention over here. And that's where the choices become conscious. What matters right now? Where do I need to go? And how can I get relief on the other pole, but not ignore it, not neglect it, but do whatever I can there to keep as much positive outcome as I can, given the situation that I'm in. So it becomes more of this kind of that dynamic flow, shifting where you need to, but never totally letting go of the other, doing whatever you can. If you are sick, you're not going to be able to be as active, but what can you do to maintain some of the positive outcomes of being active while you get more rest, as an example?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that idea, and I think that for some leaders, so you talked about, let's not call them easier. You talked about more binary options, work and play, work and rest, or activity and rest, and work life balance. I mean, I think those things are binary and easy for us to understand in the context of this conversation. But let's talk about more complicated ones that might exist in business. In those kinds of areas where you talked about this map, I think it's, Tracy, very useful to consider it that way. And I think that the benefit of understanding that our perspective is true and incomplete allows us to really elicit. And I think that your model creates space for teams to participate in rounding out that story, doesn't it, Michelle?
Yes, it does. Excuse me. Yeah, very much so. And it's really important to get your team's perspectives on where they sit with a certain, challenge that you're trying to leverage as well, because they'll bring different solutions to it, different activities on both poles, as an example. So, yeah, that's very helpful to engage your team.
Yeah. Well, you need their perspective also because they've had different experiences of the polarity than maybe you have. And you may be, you may have, as a leader, you may have an incomplete perspective. Have a preference for one pole more than the other. As an example, back to directive decision making and participative decision making. You may prefer to be a directive decision maker. I decide, we roll it out. The team may want to be more participative. They might want to be involved in some of the bigger decisions because they have a point of view you don't have. And if you don't have your team involved, then they're living in the downside of what you prefer because you're just going to drive that one pole more than the other. And that's another reason why it's really important to bring the team in to hear the perspectives. And maybe they've lived an experience of the downside of the other pole that you're not even aware of that potential of what the downside could be. And they have different fears that they need to be able to voice and they need to feel heard. And so that's another reason it's important.
One of the fun things about this, and I think that I think one of the reasons why people avoid these tensions, these frictions that you talked about earlier on, is because we think that the moment that there's friction or tension, there's conflict, and that's not always the truth, is it? And
Right.
and I think that I think that in dynamics where we have larger teams and we have lots of people sitting around thinking about things very passionately, we think of them being full of tension and conflict. And the moment that there's any disagreement in perspective, or that hey, hierarchy's really efficient, it's fast. And then somebody else is like, but how could you even think that? We have to go back and do it all over again 2 months later. It's not fast. And they're saying, no, but we got the decision made. And for 2 months we had stability and we have to make a decision again. We'll make a decision again. What are you talking about? So I think that tension, that conflict avoidance tends to put us in an unsafe place. And I really want to talk about how important it is for leaders to create safety to be able to have this conversation. Because I think, wouldn't it be true that there are a lot of times when having these discussions about values or polarity, there's somebody with a dissident opinion who's sitting quietly in the corner and just not buying what's happening. And they're quietly going to be a disruptor to any solution that's implemented.
So
Michelle,
true.
you're smiling like, oh my God, how many times have I seen that before?
I am, because you are tapping something that Tracy and I also realized. Once you develop a polarity mindset, you can't help but see the polarities. It truly is something that a muscle you continue to exercise. But we also realize that's not enough. To your point, their tension, people perceive them as conflict. So part of our polarity intelligence is not only being able to recognize polarities, but there's two other components that help a leader be polarity intelligent. And one is that they can engage in healthy relationships, because you have to have a shared purpose. You have to bring intention to that relationship to explore tensions and polarities. You have to be in balance with yourself and others. So there's a lot of relationship components to polarity intelligence. But then you also have to be able to engage in meaningful dialogue. So you really can understand another person's perspective. You can create that psychological safety. So those three elements, having a polarity mindset, cultivating healthy relationships, and having meaningful dialogue, they really all need to exist to really be polarity intelligent and have that be part of your culture. So it's a great point you brought up.
Yeah, I think that people underestimate the manner in which you need to have dialogue as well. I mean, we all have this sense of what healthy dialogue is. And I think that when we get into these areas of conflict, we retreat into our little boy and little girl selves where we're just going to take our toys and go home because it just feels unsafe here. And I think that leaders have a real responsibility to create a supportive environment where people can feel not only that there's feedback and encouragement, but there's also accountability for things that need to be addressed. And creating that safe structure is really kind of an X factor, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it is. It is. And I love what you say about how you do it.
Yeah.
And there are some really key elements in sitting down and having a dialogue. This is not a debate. This is not about my perspective versus your perspective. This is about tapping into the wisdom of everybody in the room, creating silence, the opportunity for silence and reflection. We're so used to the ping pong kind of conversations you have. People can't wait to bring their perspective forth. They're thinking about what they're going to say before the other person's even done saying what they have to say. We're not really listening to each other. We feel the resistance and tension rising up in us, and it shuts us down from really exploring what is there here for us to learn from each other. And that's hard to do without the healthy relationship. So that's why they go hand in hand. You're not going to get a lot of people who are dysfunctional to sit down and have a really good dialogue, as an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, and I think there's some ways that you can encourage that, but as a leader, you can't do that from the front of the room. You have to do that from the back of the room. You have to support the team in doing that, don't you?
Yeah.
And also, I wonder how you feel about this, but one of the tools that I think is really useful in creating meaningful dialogue in these kinds of situations is pairing people up and allowing them to actually talk to one-on-one with each other and then share their outcomes with the group, and you start to build some consensus that way. Um, are those the kinds of tools that you suggest in creating opportunities for meaningful dialogue? I'm not saying that
Well,
one, but are there other
well,
ones?
there's a
Yeah.
couple of ways. One of them is to bring a group together in a circle. We call it a dialogue circle. And the objective isn't to solve a problem. It's really to explore something together that you can learn more about before you even go into managing the polarity or solving the problem, whatever it is that you're focused on. But it really is a circle with and it's a circle. So everybody is seeing each other. You're facing each other, and you're there with the intention to learn from each other, to practice these skills of dialogue, and to explore something. So everybody can
You have a
bring
table
forth
in between you, or do you just have a round circle of
just
chairs?
a round circle of chairs.
Yep.
And oftentimes you have a stone. Sometimes we use a microphone box, but that goes in the center of the circle, and you don't speak if you don't have the box or the stone in your
The
hand.
speaking stick, that kind of thing. You can do
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
much anything, right?
Yeah,
Anything.
that kind of a thing. Anything that works, but you check in. So everybody every voice is heard initially. And then you let the dialogue flow based on who chooses to hold the stone or whatever it is that you're using as your talking stick.
But
But
don't throw the
everybody else is
stone to
listening.
somebody else.
No,
You need to hand that
you
off, don't you?
do not do that. Yes, this
Okay.
is
All right, I just
very
wanna make sure that
What
we're
are the
not throwing
ground
stones and
rules?
sticks at
Yeah,
everybody.
you're creating a calm space, right?
All right.
There's no
I wanted to follow along. I just
Yeah, well, we have had some people try those kinds of things. So,
right.
but
I would be that person.
that's one way, and you can't do that with 60 people, right? So again, this is a smaller, maybe 20, 30 people is a good size to hear from everybody. You don't want to do it with a really significantly large group. That doesn't work as well that way. But then there are some one-on-one things that we've done that Michelle can share too.
Yeah, one that comes to mind right away that's a really powerful one is called a partnership agreement tool. It's intended for two people. And actually on our book website, polarityintelligence.com, you can download it. And it's really designed to really bring that healthy relationship and meaningful dialogue to two people. And it's a very simple tool. It has 5 questions that each partner reflects on. And it really helps you get on the same page about what you can expect from me, what I need from you. How are we going to ensure that our dialogue is open and continuous? And it's, like I said, it's a very simple tool, and we have helped many leaders use it in their business. And Tracy and I, we use it all the time. We are always updating our partnership agreement as co-founders.
Between the two
our
of you,
business.
you're speaking.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. We're a walking polarity. You got
We're totally opposites.
Total opposite. So we live these tensions every single day. And that partnership agreement really has helped us to honor each other's strengths. And this is, I think, one of the biggest lessons for me with the polarities is when we started our business, we didn't have a clue what we were doing, like most entrepreneurs, right? Like, oh, we're going to go do this. This will be fun. Oh, yeah, right. Well, even after 40 years of friendship, we had no idea that our preferences for the poles in our business were so opposite of each other. And I would be holding the pole, right, for productivity, and Michelle is holding the pole for relationships. And we're both, right, pulling at the extremes. And we knew this was important in our business, but we had no idea the significance of our preference poles and how that would create a lot of tension between us and in the business itself. And so we really leveraged this partnership agreement to explore that, our dialogue, our healthy relationships. We've been living the Polarity Intelligence every day for the last 8 years, really trying to, honor what is inherent in each of us, how we're wired, and what we know is really important to have a successful business. And it takes intention and just a lot of self-reflection and learning as well.
So, as organizations grow, relationships become exponentially the problem, right? Because of the fact that there's so many more people, and these one-on-one relationships expand every time. You have 1 to 2 people, there's 2 relationships. The second you bring a third person in, there's 1, 2, 3 relationships. So you go from 1 to 3. And then when you add 4, it exponentially increases again. You're at 12, and it just keeps on going. So my point here is, it would seem to me that that having a conversation or a framework for this conversation around relationships would be really valuable, especially as organizations grow. How has it changed? Now, you're not just talking about doing it once, you're talking about doing it regularly. Michelle, give me an example of how your relationship agreement has changed over time between you and Tracy.
Well, that's such a great question. Well, the first time we did it, hers was all about what she needed from me is all about productivity. She needed to get I had to get my tasks done on time. I needed to do this. I needed to do that. I needed to do this.
So it was a gigantic to-do list that came your way.
Then mine was all about our relationship. I mean, to the point where, like, we got to stay best friends. But you know what? And it didn't happen overnight. It didn't really happen overnight, but what we began to realize, in fact, I remember the day Tracy said to me, well, I just realized I can't change another person. And I realized I got to honor what is important to her. And even though doing tasks in a sauna is not my jam, it's important. And I have got to do it. And I've got to train that muscle in myself. And we also have to have time to, connect with our clients, build relationships, and do that part as well. So I think if you look over time at our partnership agreements, which they are going on 8 years now, they have changed. I would describe them more now as just really real and honest. We're down to boy, this is really what I need from you. And this is how I'm going to show up for you.
And in the seasons, it changes, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yep. Yeah. But, and I think it's just, what, like Michelle said, initially it was all from your preference poll.
Exactly.
Because that's how you see the world. That's how you see what is necessary, is from your preference poll. So, and I have a much more masculine energy flow, and Michelle has a feminine energy flow. And So I think what we've learned is to embody the other energy more. We all have it inside of us.
Yeah.
It's just when you have preferences, that's what you lean towards, that's what you're comfortable with, that's what you push for. And I think what we've learned is what I learned for me is to embody more of the feminine energy components, which Michelle is a great role model for, and not just push for what I want, but to see the whole picture, to be more engaged in the whole picture and a participant in the whole rather than just the components that I felt were most important for what I wanted to get in the business. And so I think we're both more balanced in our needs and requests
Mhm.
and our approaches to what we're going to do, how we're going to support each other. I don't come with just my list. I come with things that I anticipate she's also going to want and need as well. So
Yeah, I really like that. And absolutely, we walk through life. We are just a gigantic projector, and the world is our screen. So we see the world as we are, not as it is.
Yep.
exactly.
Yep.
That's our interpretation.
Yeah.
Michelle, you said something really interesting though when you said, "I've got to do the list. I've got to do the asana, even though it's just not necessarily your jam." I don't want to say it so simply as why do you feel that you've got to do it, but you've gone from I don't want to do that to I've got to do it, and you're okay with that. That's a change, and I think there's something behind that. Like it's more than just it's not just making Tracy happy. There's something else.
No, there is something else. Well, first of all, it's an appreciation of why it's so important. And I think in the beginning, I didn't really see it, how important structure was in building a business. And I have a totally different perspective today. In fact, today, I can't imagine not having it. So it was, and at first you got to do stuff you don't like. I'm just sorry. I mean, Tracy will tell you, I don't like Excel spreadsheets, but there's some things when you're an entrepreneur and you got that vision out there and you're not going to just take your sandbox and go home, take your pail and go home from the sandbox. You're okay. I'm going to do this, and maybe not even forever, but for right now, I'm going to do this. And then I think the other thing is just asking yourself, how can I make it fun? If this is something I don't enjoy, how can I make it fun? And you do change over time. You do lean in, like Tracy was describing, because you begin to recognize, yeah, it's important to the other person, but it's important to our overall greater purpose and mission of why we're here. And so I need to evolve,
Yeah,
You
and I think. Sorry, go ahead, Tracy.
Oh, nothing. I was just going to say, you had said something earlier about, when there's more people. And as our business started to grow, there were
Yeah.
more people.
Yeah.
And I think that also helped shift our perspective. This isn't about what I want, what you want. This is about
Right.
our people. And we're really creating a culture. And you had said, it goes beyond, you start to grow, you got 3 people, you got 5 people, you got 10 people, whatever. So it's about creating a culture, and that culture is based on our culture is based on these principles of being in healthy relationship with each other and meaningful dialogue. And it's not acceptable to not do that. And it's not acceptable not to balance these tensions that make a difference for the sustainability of our business. So I think even just continuing to go on our own personal journeys as we've been learning about ourselves but also the reflection of that in our business, in our work with our clients and with our team was a big driver, I think, as well. Like, as we
Definitely.
started to figure out what we were doing as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and I think that there's also I think there's a solemn appreciation for the value that the other person brings,
Yeah.
and the value um, to the business of that other perspective. And isn't it? I mean, that's why you got into partnership, right? You got
That's
into
right.
partnership because there was something about the other person
Yes.
that you knew you needed in order to fulfill this mission and this purpose. And I think that's great. I think there was a lot here that I appreciate, and that brings me to a great story of a napkin that we got many years ago from John Rulin. He shared what you appreciate appreciates, and his vision for that napkin was expressing gratitude grows the person and your relationship with that person, which really aligns deeply with what you just said and what you've shared over the course of this conversation. John suddenly passed away about a year and a bit ago, and ever since we've been, paying forward the gift that he gave to us by asking our guests to appreciate someone or something. Michelle, let me go with you first. Who would you like to appreciate or shout out?
I would like to appreciate my husband, Kevin, who has always been my biggest cheerleader professionally and is the father of our sons. And he's always been a great supporter of our business. And even in the times when it hasn't been easy being entrepreneurs, and we're all figuring this out together. So I just thank you, Kevin.
Beautiful. Tracy.
Yeah, I have to thank my husband, Jerry, as well, because I'll tell you, there's never been anybody in my life like him that just is there, constant support, appreciation, awareness of what I'm trying to do, the work that it takes. And he's just always in my corner, always has that positive word for me. I know how hard this is, honey. You are so strong. You are going to do this. This is going to be amazing. Whatever you need from me. And I just couldn't do any of it without him. So thank you, Jerry.
That's beautiful. I hope both of you gentlemen see this video and not just hear it, because the way Michelle and Tracy's faces lit up and even appreciating or expressing that gratitude was powerful. Thanks for joining me, both of you. It was a pleasure.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been fabulous.
As you reflect on this conversation, you might begin to notice something. Maybe there are areas of your life or leadership where you've been trying to solve something, and those things keep on showing up again and again and again. And maybe, just maybe, it's not something to solve at all. Maybe it's something to lead, because when you start to see the difference between problems and polarities, you may begin to realize that some of the greatest growth doesn't come from choosing the right answer. It comes from learning how to hold two truths at the same time, to stay in that tension, to stay in the conversation, to stay in the possibility. And when you do that, you don't just get better outcomes, you become a different kind of leader. So the next time you feel that pull, the urge to pick a side, maybe pause for a moment and ask yourself, what if I didn't have to choose? What if there was a way to win both? And just notice what shifts. If this conversation resonated with you, I'd invite you to take a moment to grab a napkin and write down one polarity that you're navigating right now and what it might look like to lead it instead of solve it. And when you do, share it with the hashtag #PaperNapkinWisdom, because you never know who might need to see exactly what you've just discovered. Until next time, keep exploring, keep reflecting, and keep leading. One napkin at a time. Make it a great day.